London's streets were narrow, wooden houses stood close together, and the use of furnaces and fire was common on every corner. But no one had imagined that a small spark would engulf the entire city. This was the moment when history changed London. This event occurred on the night of September 2nd, 1666, when a fire broke out in Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane. People were sleeping at the time. No one had any idea that in a few hours this fire would engulf the entire city. The wind was strong, the houses were mostly made of wood, and the fire spread from one house to another as if someone had laid gunpowder. In no time, the fire connected one neighborhood to another. People began to leave their homes in fear. Some were running away with their belongings on their heads. Others were trying to get across the Thames in boats. Eyewitness accounts of that time tell that a mini-apocalypse had taken place in the city. The fire burned for 4 days and was finally brought under control on September 6th. But by then, 13,000 houses, 87 churches, and countless warehouses and markets had been reduced to ashes. The heart of the city, its commercial center, was completely reduced to dust. Surprisingly, very few human lives were lost in this great disaster. But those who survived were left homeless and destitute. Their dreams, their capital, everything was consumed by the fire. The fire forced London's rulers to think. Could a city be so weak that it could disappear in a few hours? This was the question that laid the new foundation of the city. After this disaster, a plan was made to rebuild the city. This time, the buildings were mostly made of brick and stone. The streets were widened, and attention was paid to the firefighting system. Thus, this disaster laid the foundation of a safe and modern London. This event teaches us that sometimes a disaster actually opens the door to a new beginning. The people of London showed with their courage, patience, and determination that a new city can be born from a pile of ashes. So when we look at the wide streets, wide avenues, and strong buildings of London today, it is important to remember that all this was possible after that fire. The Great Fire of London was not just an accident, but a test that made a city stronger rather than destroying it. When we talk about the Great Fire of London, most of the figures come to mind. How many houses burned down, how many churches were destroyed, how many shops were wiped out. But the real story is about the thousands of people whose lives changed in one night. Imagine a mother carrying her children and running into the dark night with only a small box in her hand containing some jewelry and old letters. A man standing on the threshold of old age is watching his life's earnings burn and cannot hold back tears of helplessness. Some people sat on the ground after watching their life's shops burn in the fire, as if the breath inside them had been burned to death. Thousands of people were taking shelter on the banks of the Thames River. Some put their belongings in boats, some on horses. But the scene in the city was like apocalypse. The fire was touching the sky. Smoke could be seen far and wide, and screams were echoing everywhere. At that moment, the people of London were just trying to survive. They didn't know whether their city would still be there when the sun rose in the morning. When the fire died down and the ashes settled, the people of London stood in a city that had lost its identity. But this was the moment when a new story began. Citizens banded together. Hands were extended to help, and it was determined that London would rise again, but this time on a stronger foundation than before. The government made new laws that now houses would be built of stone and brick, and streets would be kept wide so that the fire would not spread so quickly again. At that time, the famous architect Sir Christopher Wren gave new plans for the city, which included large churches, open streets, and safe buildings. The people of London turned their grief into strength and built new buildings. Within a few years, the city not only revived, but also became even more beautiful and organized. It teaches us that destruction is not always the end, but can often be a new beginning. Today, when we look at London's grand avenues, towering buildings, and historic monuments, hidden in the background is the story that gave birth to a new London from the intersection of sorrow and hope.